And the Bucs hope that this will be their first victory ever.
We have a great area, growing area, in Tampa, St. Petersburg, Clearwater, Sarasota, Bradenton, Lakeland, and Winnehaven, and even Wachoo. Over 2 million fans, and it's the fastest growing area in the United States.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, live from Tampa Stadium. For the first time ever in a regular season, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers entered the stadium with numbers in both the win and loss columns. The Buccaneers came onto the field to a wild standing ovation from the some 60,000-plus fans at Tampa Stadium. They did not introduce any players individually. The PA announcer said, "Ladies and gentlemen, your Tampa Bay Buccaneers."
Welcome to San Diego, California, Super Bowl 37. It is Tampa Bay versus the Oakland Raiders.
Third down, 18, dropping Gannon, looking Gannon, throws up in the head, intercepted at the 40, Derek Brooks 30, Brooks to the 25, 20, Derek Brooks all the way, there it is, the dagger's in, we're going to win the Super Bowl.
Tom Brady signing with the Tampa Bay Bucs tomorrow. Holy hell.
Everyone always says, why the Bucs, man? Why do you choose the Bucs? And it was a no-brainer.
Brady has all kinds of time, throws toward the end zone. It is a caught ball. Touchdown, Tampa Bay, Mike Evans. 8 seconds, 7 seconds. Brady to throw, throws a deep pass downfield. Got Scotty Miller in the open, makes the catch. Touchdown, Tampa Bay.
Super Bowl 55 will be underway at Raymond James Stadium. Here's the snap out of the gun. Play action fake pass to Gronkowski. He's going to score a touchdown. Touchdown Tampa Bay. Holy guacamole. Bucs are the Super Bowl champs. They can't stop the clock. And there the cannons go. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
On 3rd and 3, they protect Brady. Scans the field and lets it fly. It's Evans. It's a touchdown.
This is the Big Nasty. Yeah, Big Nasty, Hall of Fame Tampa Bay Buccaneer fan, baby.
This is Mike Allstott, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you're listening to the Cannon Fire Podcast.
Cannon Fire Podcast, brother. You ain't listening, and you're missing out. Woo!
And there the cannons go. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
Hello and welcome back to a brand new edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast. Live on YouTube this glorious Saturday morning. I am your host, as always, Rhett Matthew, joined alongside me, my good buddy and co-host, the Philly Bucs fan himself from BucsNation.com, Mr. Evan Wanish. Happy weekend to you, my friend. The Tampa Bay Buccaneer rookies report to training camp today, and the veterans report here starting next week. So, without saying football's back, we can both agree football's back, right, baby?
Yeah, you're starting to get that little bit of an itch, right, for football. It's starting to get to that point. You know, it's always exciting, especially at the beginning of camp. I think when guys first start reporting and this and that. Then after a little bit, camp gets old, but then the preseason rolls around and you get that itch again. And then eventually, you're watching third and fourth stringers play in the preseason games. You're like, okay, this is kind of not great. And then the regular season's here. So yeah, we are very close to actual football being played, and it's pretty crazy that it's gone by pretty fast. Despite I think the crazy offseason might have helped, but it has gone by pretty fast.
So we're going to catch you up on all the latest Bucs news stories from the week. We got a couple of player acquisitions to go over, but one of the biggest talking points this week has to do with the uniforms. And it's funny because this kind of sets the timetable for me, and this is where I realized that time has gone faster than I thought it did. So everybody's getting alternate uniforms this week, and the Buccaneers announced officially that the Creamsicles will be back, but due to a quote-unquote global supply shortage, which I guess has to do with the color of the uniform more than the helmet, I guess. But due to that supply shortage, the Bucs will not be getting the Creamsicles until 2023. So since that time, feels like just about every single team in the league has announced that they're going to be wearing an alternate helmet with a throwback uniform or just some special variant of their uniform. Since the NFL lifted the two-helmet rule, teams have taken advantage of it. But when the Buccaneers officially made the announcement that the creamsicle was back, how long ago does that feel like to you? Like 2 or 3 months, right?
Yeah.
February 23rd, the Buccaneers officially made the announcement that the creamsicles are going to be back. And between then and now, it only feels like we've had maybe a month or two of stuff worth to talk about. But like that's one of those things where I went and I found that tweet. Somebody had quote tweeted it complaining about everybody else getting the alternates. And they sent that out all the way back in February. So yeah, I can kind of agree with you on how the ebbs and flow of this offseason have really picked up. And like things were good when they were good, and it was slow when it was slow. But it is the end of July here. So I guess I can say that it feels a little bit faster this time around.
Yeah, and I've been doing on the Instagram page, I've been doing like a lot of more Q&As and stuff as the season gets closer and training camp gets closer. And I've gotten a bunch of questions about like, oh, why is every other team getting uniforms and the Bucs aren't? I don't know, like supply chain issues. That's what we were told. So yeah, it has nothing to do with the helmet. The helmet's easy. The helmet is just a white helmet, and you put a bunch of decals on it. That's easy. If the Bucs wanted to do a throwback helmet with their current uniforms, it would look pretty weird.
Gross.
But they could do it.
Yeah, it wouldn't look good.
So I mean, and they could do an alternate helmet this year if they wanted to. Like who's saying they won't? Who knows? It has to do with the uniforms. That's the big thing. Now the Eagles, they just released yesterday that they're going to be having a all black helmet. There's not going to be any different jerseys. And I mentioned the Eagles because the Eagles were one of the other teams that said their throwbacks are coming, but it's not until 2023. So it's not just the Bucs who are maybe affected by this supply chain issue, because the Eagles are another team who, like those Kelly Green jerseys, I think are better than theirs right now. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
I think the Kelly Greens are up there with the creamsicles. I'm a little biased towards the creamsicles, but I think the Kelly Greens are some of the best uniforms in football history.
Yeah, and I think that's better than the Eagles' current uniforms, and that's a beloved throwback uniform, but yet again, people have to wait for that. So it's not just the Bucs. I've seen some people speculate that, oh, maybe the Bucs are trying to surprise everybody and this and that. I don't know. I just think if you were going to try to surprise everybody, why would you even put out a tweet in the first place saying it was going to be 2023? Like, why not just keep quiet about the whole thing? Don't mention a peep about it. And then just one day just come out and boom. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have anything else other than what the reason was given. So
a couple of people have mentioned the idea of like, oh, how about the Bucs float this out? But, between will and determination and a bunch of people complaining, maybe somehow they pull it off this year and they do surprise everyone. Unless they make a formal announcement, I wouldn't expect them to just roll out in the creamsicle one game. But I don't know, man. It's disappointing because I think the reason it hurts that much more is because everybody wants to assume this is Tom's last year. Now, I have heard plenty of people saying, they don't think that. They were talking about it on McAfee this week, where literally just about everybody on that show is convinced that, well, we don't have any reason to believe he's not going to be back in 2023. But obviously, this is neither here nor there. We're just complaining about not getting the creamsicles this year and what could be Tom Brady's final year as a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. But it is what it is. You know what I mean? We're just complaining. And until something is able to happen, that's the latest we have for you on it. But let's talk about some better news regarding Tampa Bay this week. They made a signing at tight end. A lot of people have said this is a replacement for Gronk, and that's not the right term for it because it's going to be tough to replace Gronk. But when you're working with the tight end room that you have, I don't know if there were many other signings you could have gone out there and got who would be much better than this. A couple of names we had talked about on last week's show was this tight end, along with a guy like Eric Ebron, Jared Cook, possibly. Well, Buccaneers go out and sign tight end Kyle Rudolph to a 1-year deal. The Minnesota Vikings legend at 32 years old is in Tampa Bay and looking for a championship ring alongside Tom Brady. I mean, there's a lot of good things to be said about Kyle Rudolph. He's all around, everybody describes him, the things you hear about him, he's like a good football guy. I guess we can label some people in the league that, you know what I'm saying? Like, you kind of know what I mean. He's not afraid to get down and dirty. He's very smart, very athletic. He's been a playmaker in his career before. Last played with New York and Daniel Jones. He was a Vikings legend before that. As I mentioned, he is 32 years old. So at this point, I don't get the sense that he's going to come in here and be a bona fide tight end one like a lot of people would think. I feel like he's just going to split reps with Cam Brate all year. You know what I mean? We're going to kind of look at both of those guys as tight end ones. I think maybe Rudolph, you see him in the game on running downs a little bit more, but he can obviously be a valuable target in the end zone. He can be a mismatch for some guys, but you split reps between Cam Brate, who is getting a little bit up there in age, and then Kyle Rudolph. Both have been playmakers in their careers before, but going that route, I think you ultimately just want to make sure these guys make it through the regular season healthy and able to contribute at the end of the day. You don't really feel like you want to have to rely on one a lot more than the other. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and Rudolph isn't the same player that he was 3, 4, 5 years ago. So, yeah, I saw somebody had asked me on that Q&A thing, do you think Rudolph gets at least 800 yards? And I said no, because when I checked, he only had over 800 yards once in his entire career. So, he's not going to do that now at the age of 32. I just don't really think that's possible. For people coming in and expecting him, like you said, to be a Gronkowski replacement, no, I think you're setting an unrealistic expectation, and I think you're just going to set yourself up for disappointment that way by expecting that, because even though he's a name that you recognize, he's not the same player that he once was. He's a decent player, but he's just not what he once was. You're not going to get the 2-time Pro Bowl or Minnesota Viking, spent a decade there. I think he's with 4 or 5 more touchdowns, he can move into 10th all time for touchdowns by a tight end, I think, or something like that. So, he's had a really good career, and that's not to say he's going to be bad in Tampa, but it's just, he's not going to be the Pro Bowl tight end or even have the same impact that Gronkowski had, because Gronkowski was a unicorn. He was a guy who could do everything at a really high level. Rudolph is the reason I think the Bucs went with Rudolph and not some other tight ends such as Jared Cook, Eric Ebron, is because out of those guys, Rudolph is the best blocker. He's not a great blocker, but he's the best blocker, and he's probably, not counting Keith, who likely won't see much significant time at tight end if he does make the roster this season.
I actually wanted to sidebar and ask, do you think Keith is a practice squad guy this year?
I think so, yeah. He seems more like a project guy than anything. But yeah, without not mentioning him, Kyle Rudolph's probably the best blocking tight end they have now. And he's not a great blocker, so the Bucs might take a step back in that department. But he's a good red zone target. He's always has been. And for Bucs fans, they'll like this. He is a Saints killer. He is really every time he's played the Saints, he's played well against them. So obviously he had the infamous touchdown in the playoffs, I believe, 3 years ago, I think that was, in overtime to eliminate the Saints. So yeah, that was actually, I think it was 2 years ago. Yeah, I think it was 2 years ago, because Minnesota went on to play San Francisco in the second round. They got beat. So actually, no, it was 3 years. Yeah. I'm dating. See, the time is crazy. Time's going by.
Time is an illusion, buddy. Once you get to a certain age, it kind of starts to melt away. As depressing as that sounds.
I know, and I'm not even the old guy on this podcast, but it's starting to affect me more. But yeah, I think Rudolph can be good. I'm just saying to temper the expectations a little bit. He's if you're coming in expecting him to be this spectacular tight end, I agree with you that it might be more of a committee kind of. I don't think you're going to see Kyle Rudolph play 80% of the snaps. Cam Brate get a little and Kate Otten get none. I think all three of them could really be in almost like a rotation. Kate Otten, we have some news on him. We'll get into in a little bit, but I think it was the best move that they could have made. He was probably one of the better available names on the market. Now we do have to mention this because I want, before we move on from the whole tight end discussion for now. Still think there's a chance Rob Gronkowski's on this roster come like week 11. But
the only reason I tend to think so is because it's incredibly ironic how just about everybody but Rob Gronkowski is saying like, hey, I wouldn't rule out him coming back. I mean, Logan Ryan, a guy who played with him years in New England. He's on the Tampa Bay roster now. He comes out this week. Camille Koshtek, his girlfriend.
Yeah, so his girlfriend, his agent, and his teammate is now saying they don't think he's done. Like, come on.
He's reiterated yet again, even since the last time we recorded a podcast, like, hey, I'm done with football. I'm all set. I've got what I need. But I mean, clearly that sounds like a guy who's ready to jump back in and make a commitment here in a couple of months. I guess
that's easy to say in July, though. Like, that's the thing I keep coming back to. It's easy to say in July when it's summer and everything's going on. It's easy to say that. I wouldn't. Does the signing of Rudolph, hurt the chances of him coming back? Absolutely. I think it definitely hurts it, right? But it wouldn't surprise me.
But you better believe that if he wants to come back, the Bucs are going to make the consideration, just like they did for Tom, and Cade Otton's going to be riding the bench. Like, that's kind of what that tight end room is going to look like. But I'm still in the camp that wants to believe he's done. Like I said this on the last show. I guess I'm going to double down on it because the last thing I want to do is be someone who flip-flops opinions on this podcast. But I personally think he's done. But like you said, it's easy to say in July. And it's also easy to say when Tampa is in the middle of one of the hottest summers I have ever felt in my entire life. It is absolutely dreadful down here.
Yeah, you think he's going and saying, oh, yeah, you know what? You know what I'd love to do?
Go play some football right now.
I would love to have a practice with full pads on, just running in this heat. And then in September, I would love to play a football game in this. Oh my God. Yeah, no.
And Raymond James is notorious for the temperature on the field being way above wherever it is outside the stadium. All the red plastic seats are definitely going to make sure it's a little bit of a Dutch oven in there come the September and even the October games. I mean, really, we don't get a high of 75 in Florida until like December, if we're lucky. But
yeah, so he comes back for the stretch run. Like, it's not, I can see this playing out. Like, it's not difficult for me to see this playing out. So we'll see. I'm not, I still have a feeling he's going to be on the roster, but time will tell.
Yeah. There are some other things we need to talk about. Actually, before we move on from the tight end room, let's go ahead and give that update on Cade Otton. Okay. I guess we'll kind of preview that position before we dive into this last bit of news. And then, of course, the reason most of you will probably hear the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 2022 training camp preview. We'll just take a look at some key positions, some battles that I think could be a little underrated coming into this preseason. But Cade Otton, most of this rookie class, now officially signed to the roster. So that's always good news.
Yeah, Cade Otton's the only one that's unsigned.
Well, then forget I said what I said. I was under the impression they were all signed. I guess Otton is the only one who is not as of training camp today.
Actually, it's weird. I think I read somewhere, and this could have changed and likely did change, but I read somewhere that like out of like the however many fourth round picks that there were, not a lot of them have signed. It's weird this year with fourth round picks. Not a lot of them have signed their rookie contracts. I don't know why. A lot of people think it may seem to be with Houston Texans, their pick. I forget who it was. Who was the Florida running back? Do you remember? It was
you're asking the wrong guy here.
Yeah, it was a Florida running back, but the Texans. Okay, well, the chat says Greg Allman tweeted that Otton signed, so it had to be right now because last night he did not.
Greg Allman's taking a little siesta on the beach, I think. He actually sent a tweet out. Let me see if I can find it. He said this may be a little out of pocket. Damian Pierce, I think, is who you were thinking of.
Yeah. Him. Yep.
Let me find this tweet really here, and we got the details for it. That's the great thing of doing this stuff live. You get to find stuff out. All right, at beach with family, so a bit out of pocket. But as the Tampa Bay Buccaneer rookies report to training camp today, they'll be signing the last 2 draft picks and second rounder Logan Hall and 4th rounder Cade Otton.
Yeah, so it's not official yet though. That's
Logan Hall was able to work out a deal late last night, but to know that pretty much the entire rookie class is going to be good to go,
and
you don't have to worry about that. I never feel like you have to worry about that too much, but some people do, and now you don't.
Yeah, that's always the case. Yeah, every year somebody tweets me, "Oh, how are they going to have salary cap space to sign a rookie class?" I'm like, it's okay. Like their first round pick isn't going to be an unrestricted free agent. Like I promise. Yeah. So Cade Otton, though, the news that we have on him is that he was finally medically cleared for training camp. He was held out of rookie camp, I believe, held out of OTAs and everything. It was an ankle injury. He was nursing that, I think, during like the whole process of the draft and everything. So it's good that he is now medically cleared, 100% good to go, because he's going to need the reps. I think next year, obviously, Kyle Rudolph signed a 1-year deal. Even if Rob Gronkowski comes back, it's likely only for 1 year. Cameron Brate, who knows if he's going to be here next year? Like, you could be looking at the tight end room with just Cade Otton in it. So it's important for him to develop this year a little bit. And this is the first step in it.
When you also talk about guys coming back, like I know you can never rule out a guy like Gronkowski, but even Kyle Rudolph on a 1-year deal, Cam Brate being as old as he is, the average age of that tight end room is going up every year. And when you are Cade Otton, not only are those reps that much more valuable, but I think after a certain point, he's going to have to realize that this franchise is going to lean on him a little bit to kind of maybe be not the next superstar in that tight end room, but as serviceable as a guy like Cam Brate one day. It's hard to say a whole lot of bad about Cam over his career here.
No. And you're right. You make a great point, that every year Cameron Brate gets a year older. If Rob Gronkowski was here, he'd be a year older. Kyle Rudolph, you signed, is 32. Like it's an old group right now. And that's one of the reasons they drafted 2 tight ends. That's one of the reasons. So obviously Cook Keith is, I think, limited. He's going to have a very specific role if he makes the roster. Cade Otton is that guy, though, that you're looking at that can be like, maybe a starter, like definitely a contributor. So before the draft, I looked at him as a guy with a limited ceiling, but a pretty high floor. I thought his floor was pretty high. I don't think he's going to be a bad player. I just don't know if you're going to be getting, like this is a top 15, top 10 tight end. Like, no, I think he's going to do his job. But if all goes well in his development and everything. So it's good news to see him finally medically cleared. That ankle's been bothering him. And, it's good that he's going to be able to go full speed now at these training camp practices, because for a rookie, especially one that may not get as much playing time, these practices are really crucial, and the preseason as well. So he'll be able to play in those games as well.
Oh, yeah, 100%. One more guy that we need to focus on before we start to dive into position battles. And we can officially put this to bed. I think we talked about it last week, but Leonard Fournette.
Oh, my God.
A report comes out, I don't know, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago as we get ready for training camp, that Lenny showed up to mandatory OTAs weighing about 260 pounds, which his trainer has come out and said was probably blown out of proportion a little bit. But nobody was denying that Lenny showed up to camp a little bit overweight. And I mean, listen, when you don't go to voluntary OTAs and you show up to mandatory OTAs out of shape, I can understand the cause for concern, but the reason that this has been a non-story since day one is because Leonard Fournette is a professional athlete who probably has a good enough team around him to know how to manage somebody's weight like that. But the official comment came out this week, kind of wrapping things up. Team trainer Jordan Bush, who has been working with Lenny since minicamp, acknowledged to Greg Allman of theathletic.com that Lenny came in heavy, but said that he's been putting in the work. Quote, honestly, he did return to us a little bit bigger than we wanted. He was also in the sauna every day, getting extra cardio every single day. We called it fat camp just to mess around with him, but he was doing that type of stuff every single day, and we could literally see the weight coming off. He also agrees that the story was blown out of proportion, which I think everyone with a solid idea of what goes into the work of being an NFL player can agree that maybe this was blown out of proportion, but for anyone who was still hung up on it, I mean, you heard it practically straight from the horse's mouth. Leonard also came out and said on Twitter a couple of times, people can say what they want. I will see you September 11th, which out of context sounded like a threat, but we know that he doesn't have any of that going on with him. But Leonard Fournette, fresh off a 3-year deal with Tampa Bay, it's going to be, I don't want to say it's going to be an important preseason for him, but you would like to see him produce after hearing some of the stuff that you have. I think, everybody gets a little weary after you sign the running back. It's a 3-year deal. He got about the average salary that most good running backs do in the NFL, even if it was a little more team friendly. I mean, you just paid the guy over $20 million. You want to see him produce and you want to see him be in shape. And the latest that we've heard is he's right around 240 pounds, which I think he plays at like 235 or something. So, I mean, he'll be fine, but you still want to make sure he's up to snuff, because we have seen some Buccaneers signed running backs before who fizzled out after they got their deal.
So that report about the 260 pounds thing was from Rick Stroud, which was from like a month and a half ago.
Yeah, it got dug up solely for clickbait.
Somebody picked it back up and thought, oh, Leonard Fournette's 260 pounds right now. Okay. Like, no, that's not the case. It never was the case. Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, you don't want to see a running back be 260 pounds, even at OTA, right? Like, duh. But it's also, yeah, this is getting way. I got people asking me, so do you think Rachaad White will be the starter now that Leonard Fournette's overweight? Like, what? Like, stop. Like, you act like since he's over, a little bit overweight, that he's lost his ability to play football, or like that weight's going to stay. It's not going anywhere, He says that, he always, in the offseason, he always puts on weight and then takes it back off. Now,
I feel like every player in the NFL, you know what I mean? Like, once you're not on a regimen 5-6 days a week and you kind of get a month off, I mean, no shit, you're going to put on a little bit of weight.
Yeah, you're training, but you're not doing like you would during the season or camp. Yeah. But people are acting like like I said, he lost his ability to play football. And he said that, like I said, he said he puts on the weight. Every player does that. And it's not that big of a deal. Like it's really, really not. Now he shows up to training camp and he weighs 260 pounds, then sure, then you've made zero progress, and then there's an issue, right? If you show up to training camp and you're weighing 260 pounds and you look big, then there's a problem. But all the reports have been that he's fine. And also I'm sure, even though he does put on the weight, maybe this offseason he put on a little bit more than he normally does. Maybe that's the case, right? Because his trainer even said that he came back a little bit heavier than they would have liked. So maybe instead of 260, maybe he normally comes in at like 250, This isn't unusual for athletes. They're professional athletes. They can work that weight off pretty easily. They have the best dietitians in the world, the best workout plans in the world. He'll be fine. I promise you that Rachaad White is not going to be the starter because Leonard Fournette's overweight. If Rachaad White's the starter, that means Leonard Fournette's hurt or Leonard Fournette just got outplayed, not because he's overweight. And it's a non-story, and this will be the last time that we mention it. Like I said, unless he shows up to camp, in like the same shape, then there's an issue. Then there's a problem. But until that happens, and even Rick Stroud said that because Leonard Fournette messaged Rick Stroud because Leonard Fournette wasn't too happy with it, and Rick Stroud was like, look, that was like a month ago that I reported that. A lot can change in a month. So I would keep an eye on Leonard Fournette. Sure. I don't expect him to be 260 pounds when he shows up to camp next week. So just keep an eye on it, but it's not that big of a deal.
Hey, if he rolls up and he's not 260, let's say he's 265, pushing 270, our buddy Richard T from LA in the chat brings up a good point. Maybe they can just go the power back route, huh? Mike Allstott 2.0. With playoff Lenny, big number 7 coming through the A gap. Leonard Fournette up the gut. No, you don't like that?
Leonard Fournette with the gut. That's what it would be.
Well, luckily, we don't have an Eddie Lacy situation on our hands just yet. There is nothing to be worried about when it comes to Lenny. I feel like I can confidently say that as of right now. We have all the evidence to believe that he's been out there putting the work in. You look at his social media, all of his channels he's putting out, the guy is working. So clearly, he's taking this seriously. But let's get into these training camp position battles, and I want to start with the one that people are clamoring for. This is the one. This is the only one that matters, in my opinion.
The quarterback battle.
Second best position on the team. Jose Borregales and Ryan Suckup. If you had to project a starter for week 1 on this Tampa Bay team, do you feel like Borregales has a better chance than most people think?
Yeah, I do. I think he has a better chance. I can't project who's going to win, but I think it's going to be a legit battle. I think both players, the coaching staff is going to come in and both players are going to get a fair shot at this. I don't think there's going to be leaning any way. They like Jose Borregales. They were worried that when they waived him and tried to put him on their practice squad, that somebody else was going to pick him up and make him be their kicker. I'm sure it has to be going through the Buccaneers' heads. Like, can they do that again this year? Like, can they get away with that again this year, or do they risk losing him? If they try to say, oh, we'll have Suckup for this year, and then next year, Borregales will be the guy, and we'll cut Suckup in the offseason. Are you sure you can do that again with Borregales? And I'm sure that's going to be going through their heads. So I think this is going to be a legit battle. It's going to come down to the actual games. That's what it's going to come down to, the actual preseason games, like who kicks the best during those. Practice matters, but practice is just different. It's a different environment than the preseason games. So I'm very interested to see who wins. It'll be very interesting. Obviously, Suckup, he's been consistent. He's accurate. It's just his limitation is the leg. And Borregales has a good leg, but Borregales is inexperienced. And I feel like younger kickers are more fragile than older kickers, than veteran kickers. And I think you've seen that in Tampa Bay before, where like Roberto Aguayo and Matt Gay, younger kickers, I think the veterans know how to put a miss behind them. I think younger kickers, it could stay with them a little bit. And if, Jose Borregales were to get the job, this would essentially be his first year in the NFL. I know he played a little bit last year, but this would essentially be his first year in the NFL. So it's going to be close. And like I said, it's going to come down to those preseason games. I'm curious to see how they handle it. Like, okay, an extra point. All right, Suckup, you go. All right, a 35-yard field goal. Okay, Jose, you go. So we're gonna see. That's going to be an interesting one to keep an eye on, though, and keep tabs of. Was Suckup 4 for 5 at practice and Borregales was 3 for 6. Okay, then Borregales was 5 for 5 and Suckup was 2 for 4. Just something to keep an eye on there. I think that's a legit battle. Yeah.
Even if one guy, let's say one dude goes, 5 for 5 one day, the other guy goes 3 for 5, 4 for 5. You're looking at those misses too, because if he's missing from, I know at the Buccaneers training camp battles, whenever they bring the kickers out, they normally like to push those guys. I remember one time back in 2019, we watched Matt Gay nail a field goal in the indoor facility from the midfield logo. Like, he absolutely just bombed it. So I know they like to have some fun. If he goes out there and he misses a 55-plus yarder, I'm not going to be...
the misses from 53.
Right, yeah. It's one of those things where even Ryan Suckup has never been known for having that booming leg. Like, he's no Justin Tucker, but, I mean, what have we said before? Inside 35 yards, he's pretty much automatic when he needs to be. And I think that's what you need, the bare minimum from an NFL caliber kicker. But that's going to be a fun position battle to watch. It's one that we haven't had to worry about in a little while, and that's why it's I always think a little bit interesting.
I don't think you have to worry about it necessarily, but just keep an eye on it. I think if Jose Borregales wins the job, that means he'd be out a pretty good kicker in Ryan Suckup. Like, Suckup has been really good for the Bucs the past 2 seasons. Like, so maybe that means Jose Borregales is like the dude. Or if Suckup beats him out, that means Suckup's still good. Like, yeah. I think they're not in a bad situation either way. It's just this is the first year I think you're going to see a legit competition now for Ryan Succop at least.
Let's dive into the trenches here on the offensive side of the ball. The Buccaneers had some changes at the offensive line, and this obviously carries so much more weight now because of the stability that this unit has been able to have ever since Tom Brady came to Tampa Bay. We have seen Bucs offensive lines over the year. We're halfway through the year. You're taking guys out, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't. I mean, the stability that they have found is what has made them one of the better units in the NFL. The offseason happens. You get the retirement of Ali Marpet. You lose Alex Cappa to Cincinnati. There goes your interior line, right? So the Bucs were tasked with, between free agency and the draft, going out there and trying to find some guys who can fill that gap. They signed Shaq Mason from New England. He comes in. He's pretty much going to be that right guard, right? Like, I have to believe that that's his job to lose at this point. Can't imagine anyone else really filling in there. So that left guard spot is obviously where things get spicy. You've got guys like Luke Gedeke, who they just drafted this year, Robert Hainsey, who has been on the team for a little while. Nick Leverett may or may not be in the mix. And then, of course, Aaron Stinney is also a part of the equation, who filled in at right guard during the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Super Bowl run and played tremendously. They made sure to re-sign him this last offseason, so he'll be on the team no matter what. But who do you think has the edge in this left guard spot? Because that's really the only hole left, it seems like, on this offensive line. And yeah, you've got training camp in the preseason to figure this stuff out, but clock is still ticking. You know what I mean?
You want to have an answer sooner rather than later. You don't want many question marks, especially on your offensive line when your offensive line is protecting a 44-year-old quarterback who's not very mobile, right? You don't want him being.
What are you talking about, dude? Hold on, let me stop you right there.
Okay, well,
let's burn a timeout. Not very mobile.
Yeah.
That's the highest rated quarterback in Madden 23 you're talking about. Not very mobile.
Yeah, I'm sure he wasn't rated for his mobility.
All right. Anyways, go ahead.
You're talking to the guy with the TB12 hat.
I'll listen. I'll let it go this time. You go ahead.
This time, okay. But you don't want him getting hit. You don't want him getting hit. So you don't really want a question mark at the left guard spot. And maybe you do have that question mark. Who knows? But Aaron Stinney has the experience. I think he has more of the trust of the coaching staff because of the past that he's had. He's filled in tremendously well. The one concern with Aaron Stinney, like in baseball with utility guys and like bench guys, you could look at a bench guy and go, man, he's batting over 300. He's been really, really good. Yeah, he's been really good in that role. If you played him for 100 games, is he batting 300? Probably not.
Sample size matters.
Like, there's a reason he's a bench guy. Aaron Stinney, he's good in a vacuum, right? He's good. If you start him all 17 games, how good is he really? And that's what the Bucs, that's what they're gonna have to determine. Is he good enough to hold up for 17 games, or is he a guy who can fill in 2-3 games, but you don't really want him playing every single game, plus the playoffs? Like, you don't really want that. So we'll have to wait and see. I do think Luke Gedeke, the second round pick, has a real shot at winning it. Robert Hainsey, it's tough because they drafted him because they liked him to be at center. But they just re-signed Ryan Jensen to a 3-year deal. So I wonder if maybe plans changed there at some point. Maybe they didn't like how Hainsey looked at center at some points during camp and during his rookie season. So maybe plans had changed there, but I think he'll be in the mix. But to me, this is going to be Luke Gedeke versus Aaron Stinney. I think that'll be basically the battle. Robert Hainsey with an outside shot. I think Nick Leverett probably has a way outside shot, but you never know.
Yeah, I feel like he's had his chances before.
Yeah. So I think he played a little bit in that Indy game and didn't play great, but they also didn't play like horrible either. I don't know. But I do think it's going to come down to one of those two guys. And obviously the experience is on Stinney's side, but I think the upside, I think Gedeke has a lot more upside than Stinney does. So that, yet again, that's going to have to be a determination that the Bucs have to make. Can they trust Aaron Stinnie to go out a full 17 games? Okay. Can they trust a rookie to go out in the full 17 games to protect Tom Brady? They already did that once with Tristan Wirfs. Would they be willing to do it again? We'll have to wait and see. But I do think those two guys are going to be battling it out, and I think that's going to be down to like the final day of camp. Even I don't think that may not even be settled before week 1. I think you'll find out when they trot out there for their first offensive drive in Dallas. So we'll have to wait and see. But I'm very interested in that too, because both those guys are relatively young. Stinnie's a little bit older. I think he's like 26, 27, but obviously Luke Gedeke seems to be the future either way. So ideally, I think the Bucs would probably like to see Gedeke take the reins, because you invested a second-round pick in him, and if he can beat out Aaron Stinnie, that's a positive sign that maybe you hit on a second-round pick here. So I'm interested to see, but yet again, that's something that's going to come down to not only the training camp practices, but the preseason games. Because I think the preseason games, Stinnie's going to play, Gedeke's going to play, Hainsey's going to play, and even Nick Leverett's going to play. Now, all those guys won't be playing with the starters, which that'll be interesting to see too. The starters limited time, who's their left guard in that limited time, because that would probably show you a little hint at who's the front runner, right? So let's say week 1, versus Miami, that first preseason game, Aaron Stinnie trots out there with the starters, they play a drive. That would show me that Aaron Stinnie's probably the leader in the clubhouse right now. Doesn't mean that could change, right? The next week could be Luke Gedeke, but that's an interesting battle. And I think that's probably the biggest battle I think that everybody's going to be talking about. And, we'll just have to wait and see what happens, because I think both players are good. And obviously both are going to make the roster, but there's risk and reward to both of them, I think.
Let me just say that I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm Team Gedeke. I would like to see the rookie come up and really make a statement at camp, go out there and play his ass off in the preseason and be a starting left guard in the NFL week 1. And I think that's just because of the weight that those draft picks hold, right? You draft guys these last 2 years to come onto this team and be contributors, not really knock it out of the park, because you're not drafting in the top 15 of the first round anymore. But when you sign guys like Logan Hall, when you sign guys like Joe Tryon, who's going to have a much bigger platform this year to showcase what he's made of, those picks just mean that much more, because it's another feather in the cap for Jason Light. Everybody can kind of say, hey, this guy is continually drafted incredibly well. And nothing against Aaron Stinnie, but just like you said, we know he is good in a vacuum. We know he is good certain times of the year. We know he is a good backup. Listen, I don't know the state of a lot of backup offensive linemen in the NFL, but I would bet that Aaron Stinnie is probably one of the better backups you could have on your interior offensive line. He was able to play right guard. He's fighting for the left guard position this season. He's a little versatile. Bucs re-signed him for a reason. So, I'm a big Stinnie fan. But you drafted Gedeke, and the last thing I want to see happen with another offensive lineman is a Robert Hainsey situation, because I'm sure he can contribute, but the Bucs are not in a period where they need to wait around and find out if he can. You've already got a pretty good starting offensive line. And unfortunately for Hainsey, it's like he's been in purgatory on this team. And I'm a big fan of drafting linemen. I was a big fan of Hainsey, seeing him come out of the draft. And he really hasn't had much of a chance, right? He's had a few regular season reps, but beyond that, it is what it is. By the time his 4 years is up here in Tampa, I'm curious what the offensive line is going to look like, but I have to imagine he's not going to get a whole lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? Super crucial playing time, I guess, is what I'm looking for. I don't think he's going to have much of a chance between now and when he ultimately leaves to prove that he's a superstar. But hindsight is always 20/20. I could be dead wrong in 2 years, but I would hate to see that happen to a guy like Gedeke. And if he doesn't get the job, or at least a prominent position this year, I feel like it could. Maybe 1 year behind Stinnie, he's good to go next year, but I don't know. I kind of worry about that.
If he's good to go next year, then you're doing the same thing with Luke Gedeke.
Right.
That's the issue. And
I was referring to Gedeke when I said 1 year and then he's good to go next year. But
okay, I thought you were talking about Hainsey. like I said, I thought the plan was going to be for Hainsey to be their starting center, like for the future, but they just re-signed Ryan Jensen to 3 years. Like Ryan Jensen and Robert Hainsey's contracts both expired at the same time now. Like you're going to put all your faith in Robert Hainsey when he hasn't started a game at center in the NFL to replace Ryan Jensen in 3 years?
I mean, when you look at the situation the Bucs are going to be in, yeah, they're going to have to start paying guys over these next few years. We know that. This team's probably going to look a lot different 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, they're going to have to say goodbye to some of their draft picks that are good players because you can't re-sign everybody.
Right. I mean, I would make a bet that 3 years from now, Ryan Jensen is not here. 3 years from now, Tom Brady is more than likely not playing here.
I mean, yeah, guys like Shaq Mason, Donovan Smith probably won't even be here in like 3 years.
Right. So I think they're going to get to the point where they're not really going to have a choice but to roll with Hainsey. But I also think the reason we're talking about this like this is because Tom Brady came back. If Tom Brady doesn't come back out of retirement, Ryan Jensen doesn't re-sign. Alex Kapp is gone. Ali Marpet probably still retires.
And do the Bucs make an aggressive trade for Shaq Mason if Tom Brady's not?
They're not going to get the deal on it that they did, I don't think.
Well, I'm sure, but Bill Belichick wasn't trying to do Tom Brady any favors, so I didn't think that had any impact in it. But would they have made that trade? Probably not. Like, you might have rolled with like Aaron Stinney and like a Luke Gedeke, and then maybe you sign a veteran because I don't know if you want Robert Hainsey at center. That's a lot of inexperience in the interior. But it would have looked a lot different. So we'll wait and see what that left guard position not only looks like for this year, but for the future. And then it also ties in with center and then right guard. Shaq Mason only has 2 years on his deal. So does one of those guys slide over to right guard when Shaq Mason goes? Who knows? But that'll be a fun one to watch as well.
Let's talk about the quarterback room on this team. I know I know we kind of joked about it before, but there is a legitimate shot Kyle Trask wins QB1. I just no. Oh, okay. But seriously, let's break down the quarterback room for Tampa Bay. Tom Brady is your starter. Blaine Gabbert, as of right now, is your second string. Kyle Trask, third string. Ryan Griffin, probably going to be a practice squad guy. So that quarterback 2 spot, a lot of people have their eyes on, and we had the same exact conversation a year ago. The difference is Kyle Trask having a year of riding the bench under his belt. He's a second-round pick, and you would hate to see a second-round pick not touch the field for his first 2 years. He gets the preseason reps, but when Tom Brady's on your team, of course he's not going to see the field. But as far as the QB2 spot goes, a lot of people really feel like Kyle Trask has to prove his worth and win the QB2 spot this year. And personally, I don't feel that way. But what do you make of this battle, if there even is one at this point?
If he doesn't win the quarterback 2 spot, if he can't beat out Blaine Gabbert in the year 2, he's done. You're a second round pick.
I know that Gabbert holds a certain level of significance. He's got experience. Everybody says, oh, he knows the playbook, but so does Tom. You know what I mean? It's not like he needs Blaine Gabbert there.
So does Kyle.
Right. Nobody really needs Gabbert there to hold their hand through this thing. But, I mean, the Bucs coaching staff thinks pretty fondly of him. They seem to think he's the next superstar quarterback of the NFL after Brady retires. But aside from all of that, is there that much pressure on Trask to win the QB2 job? Because I feel like it's an uphill battle for him.
Eventually, talent's got to win out. Are you more talented than Blaine Gabbert? Yes or no?
You should be. Yeah, for a second round pick.
You should be, Now, I mean, Blaine Gabbert was a first round pick. He was a top 10 pick, but he's shown that over the years he struggled, right? So Kyle, I mean, this is such an important camp and preseason for Kyle Trask. You could be looking at an offseason where the Bucs are quarterback hunting next year, and not necessarily veteran quarterback hunting, but young quarterback hunting in the draft. This is a draft coming up that has probably maybe 5 or 6 quarterbacks that could go in the first round. You have to think if Kyle Trask doesn't show promise in the preseason and camp this year, because that's really the only look they're going to get, right? Because Tom Brady's your starter, so you're not going to get a look at him inside the regular season. So this is Kyle Trask's chance to shine here. And if he doesn't, you could seriously have to wonder if they're going to use a first-round pick on a quarterback, because you have to have a plan. And this is important, right? Maybe on the depth chart, maybe he's not the second string person on the official Buccaneers depth chart. You have to come out of the preseason though and training camp definitively saying Kyle Trask looked better than Blaine Gabbert. Like in the preseason game versus the Dolphins, Kyle Trask looked better than Blaine Gabbert did. Because if he didn't, then there's been zero progress made. And like it would not be good to me. I think Kyle Trask needs this training camp and preseason to go well.
And I mean, like, yeah, there's Florida Gator fans who have a lot invested in Kyle Trask. They're obviously going to be homers when they root for Tampa Bay. But I also think from the Bucs perspective, if you don't see that improvement from Kyle Trask, then you have to have zero issues with washing your hands of it, saying, hey, that wasn't a good pick. Let's move on. Because the fact of the matter is, and I think unfortunately this also plays into kind of an unlucky situation for Trask, the Bucs have been a team that has put so much resources into what the team needs right now over the last few years, right? Like, we're not really planning for the future. I know for a long time when we would watch these Bucs teams being built over the last decade and a half, it was like, yeah, this guy's a playmaker, this guy's a stud, this guy could be good, but ultimately we're trying to get a team together for 1 to 2, 3 years down the road. When you've got Tom Brady at quarterback, he doesn't have the time to waste to do that garbage. I mean, the Bucs have already won a Super Bowl under the TV12 regime, but that's been their mindset as far as acquiring players, drafting talent. You want guys to come in and be contributors. And as a QB2, Kyle Trask doesn't have a whole lot of room to be a contributor. But just like you alluded to, if you don't see very much progress, a lot of people, I think, are just going to have to kind of let it go. You know, unfortunately for Kyle, Tom Brady decided to play 3 years in Tampa. It sucks for him, but, you know, he wasn't drafted to a quarterback needy team. And this is obviously a much different conversation, as we had mentioned, if Brady doesn't come back. But he's back. He's here. He's your QB1 until he's not. So, you know, Trask is just kind of there.
Yeah, and like I said, he needs to. That's fine if Blaine Gabbert is the number 2 because they like him or whatever. But what I'm basically saying, you have to feel like Trask is the second best quarterback.
You have to feel like he could potentially be the next guy. Like, you have to be like, you know what? You get that guy some more miles on him. He could be a starting quarterback in the NFL.
You have to go into the season thinking, okay, Blaine Gabbert might be the backup, but Kyle Trask is the second best quarterback on the roster. Because if you don't, if you go into the season thinking Kyle Trask is probably the third best on the roster, there's an issue. There is an issue that with a year of experience, he still wasn't progressing enough as a second round pick. It's not like he's a 5th round pick or anything. He was a second round pick who broke a bunch of records at Florida, played really well at Florida, and he hasn't progressed enough to be the second best quarterback on the team. Like, that's not good. And this is a critical camp for him, and I hope he does good. I don't root against anybody, but it's critical. It is absolutely critical for him. And obviously my opinion of him as a player has nothing to do with personally. I'm sure he's a great guy. I hope he does good. Of course I want him to succeed. I don't want him to fail at life, but like, it's the reality. He has to show up. And I'm not saying he has to play spectacular in the preseason, but you have to come away thinking, okay, yeah, Kyle Trask is better than Blaine Gabbert at this point. And if you don't, I think there's real trouble, and I think that could be the writing on the wall for Trask.
Time doesn't wait for anyone in the NFL, and at the end of the day, even though Kyle Trask is in the position that he is, you got to go out there and get it. And that's where he is. Will he do that this preseason? Let's sit back and find out. But let's talk about the other side of the football as we kind of start to get to the second half of this training camp preview. There's 2 position groups I wanted to touch on here before we wrap up the pod. The first being that safety position. It's a pretty talented safety room. Antoine Winfield Jr., of course, back. Newly signed Logan Ryan. Mike Edwards still involved there. Honestly, I think the biggest takeaway I'm going to have from this is I'm excited to see a lot more of Mike Edwards this year.
Yeah, the versatility in the safety room is what I'm going to look at. Obviously, like you mentioned, Logan Ryan, Mike Edwards, Antoine Winfield, guys that can do it all. Then you add Keanu O'Neal, who can do a little bit of strong safety and also linebacker. So you have a lot of versatility in that safety room. I'm curious. I don't think they're going to have a set starter next to Antoine Winfield Jr. I really don't.
I don't think so either. I think it's situational.
Yeah, it's going to be a rotation between those three guys. And I think Mike Edwards is going to see a lot more playing time this year for sure. But I think you're going to see, like, it's not going to be like, oh, it's Logan Ryan for 10 games. No, like, I don't think that. I think they're going to give guys chances. And, I think the loss of Jordan Whitehead is big. I think it's bigger than some people are talking about. I think people at points this season, I'm not saying the entire year, but there will be points in the season, I think, where people will kind of say, like, man, yeah, Whitehead could have been used on that one, or, Whitehead could have helped in this game against this play or something.
It really sucks. I mean, we've been vocal about what big Whitehead fans we were on this show, and now he's going to be losing games with the Jets. Hey, at least he has stealth blacks.
Well, they got a quarterback too, a generational talent.
Oh yeah, man, Zach Wilson. The offseason he is
generational talent.
We didn't even touch on that, but that guy has transcended expectations. He is now one of the better NFL tier quarterbacks. Don't ask me why. I don't make the rules. But I had referred to the stealth black uniforms that the Jets are going to have because they are yet another team who gets an alternate uniform this year with an alternate helmet on top.
Well, they've always had the black though.
They've always had the all black, but I guess like the difference between this is the color of the Jets logo, and it's like a matte black. It'll look cool. I don't know if it'll look cool at a 1 p.m. on a Sunday afternoon, but a lot of these uniforms look cool. But
if they're playing in New York in November, it'll be fun.
Yeah, but I think the Jets totally. They just whiffed. Why didn't they call it the jet black? Why didn't they call them the jet black uniforms? Like it come on, dude.
Yeah. I mean, if anybody from the Jets organization is listening to this, you can contact Rhett Matthew at the Campfire Podcast. So and he will give you all your marketing tools and everything.
Somebody should hire me. We've spent way too much time complaining about other teams' uniforms on this episode, so I apologize for that. Let's jump back into this discussion on the safety room. Evan, didn't mean to totally derail your point there.
No, but I think it's gonna be interesting because each player kind of brings their own personal skill set. Like I said, Keanu O'Neal is a strong safety, but can also play linebacker. Logan Ryan is a safety, but can also play kind of a little bit of nickel corner. Mike Edwards is more of a free safety, but he's versatile. Antoine Winfield, they like to move him all around, and I don't think that's going to change. I think they're not going to have him set in one spot. So I think the safety room is going to look interesting because I just think they're going to have a bunch of dudes who can just do a bunch of different things, and it's going to make some of the looks that they give teams on defense very interesting.
Hey, well, that's Todd Bowles' specialty. I mean, we have talked about the variety of what he rolls out this defense in, and sometimes it takes teams a couple drives to kind of figure out what he's putting in front of them. But with him, with him being in a head coach capacity, I think it just brings another level to what he's going to have to do on this defense. Yeah, he's got co-defensive coordinators, but I mean, he's still the guy. You know what I mean? He's still going to be blitzing a bunch. You're going to see a lot of the same from the Bucs defense this year, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, I think it's been a top 10 unit these past couple of years. I think most people can agree that we are just strides better than where we were 5 years ago talking about this Bucs defense. But let's talk about one last position battle. And I'm excited about this one too, because I don't think a lot of people have high expectations, but I think it is realistic. The defensive line, not so much your outside linebackers, your edge rushers, nothing like that. Vita Vea right there in the middle, some Polynesian power. I'm not worried about Vita, hoping he can stay healthy. But Akeem Hicks and Raheem Nunez-Roches, I think Nacho is going to kind of push for some playing time this year. Like he's stuck around on this team and he's been a contributor. They kind of leaned on him a little bit more last year, but I think he might edge out Akeem Hicks for playing time. I think they might split snaps at the end of the year. I know you're giving me that look, but I personally believe there's going to be I don't think he's going to be a starter week 1 over Hicks. That's not what I'm saying. But I think he can make some noise on the defensive line. You don't think? Are you laughing at me? This is laughable to you? Akeem Hicks can't stay healthy.
The way you made it sound like he's just going to outplay him. Like,
no, that's
you didn't mention.
That's not the impression I wanted.
You didn't mention health at all. Like, you didn't mention health until the very end there.
That's not the impression I wanted to give. I just wanted to mention that, like, hey, maybe he is going to be featured a little more on this defensive line because he has clearly been earning the playing time these last few years.
So
Has he not?
He's gonna beat out Logan Hall and Will Golston too.
No, it's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
Forget it. Don't even worry about it. Let's just end the show. That's the podcast, folks.
Oh man. That is a take. That is certainly a take, my friend. Yeah, I think the thing about the Bucs defensive line is they can have a rotation interiorly now, which I don't even know if interiorly is a word, but anyways, I don't know if they could have in the past. I mean, you have Akeem Hicks, Logan Hall, Will Golston, Nacho. And I mean, Nacho a lot of the time will fill in for Vita Vea. Like he's kind of like the nose tackle, like the backup nose tackle. So I think if you're going to see him on the field a lot, it could be because Vita Vea is still, the one knock on him is that he still doesn't play like, it's not like he's playing 80-90% of the snaps. And part of that's the coaching staff, I think. But like, he should be playing a bit more.
So what you're saying is Nacho could potentially contribute a little bit more than people think he will this year? Is that what you're saying by that?
Not over the guy they just paid $10 million to. I think Logan Hall won't be the starter. I think Will Golston will likely be a starter, and that's good. Like, I don't think you'd want to thrust him into the starting role right away. That's not a recipe for success, in my opinion. I think Will Golston can be. We know what Will Golston is. He's safe. He's going to give you probably 4.5 sacks a year. He's going to play solid run defense. He's not going to do anything spectacular, like he's not going to make a wow play. Like he's going to do his job. He's going to be in the right spots. He's a safe, solid option. And then you have Hicks, who is obviously the wild card. If Hicks is healthy, he's a pass rushing specialist who can, a guy that size that can rush the passer like he can when he's healthy and he's on his game is pretty special. And I think, you look back 2, 3, 4 years ago when the Bears had Khalil Mack, it was Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks. They ran a defensive line. And I think if Akeem Hicks can get back to sort of what he was in 2017, 2018, the Bucs have a real player on their hands. And that, I think, changes the dynamic of the whole defensive line as far as the interior goes. I think you're going to see a rotation. I think they want to keep guys fresh. I think they want to keep them healthy. Like you mentioned with Hicks's health, you don't want him playing 80-90% of the snaps, in the season. You want him healthy for the playoffs. Like that's the ultimate goal now. Obviously the regular season matters, but when you're talking about the Bucs and their current situation, yeah, like the playoffs matters. Like I was to a certain point last season where I was like, by like week 12, week 13, I was like, okay, like let's get into the playoffs. Like I know they're making it. Like let's get there. And I think this is going to be sort of the same situation this year as well. And health is important. Health is one of the reasons that they didn't win the Super Bowl last year or didn't advance versus the Rams because they weren't healthy enough. And I think that's going to be a major thing that the Bucs are going to have to eye this season. Also, wouldn't rule out them signing another interior pass rusher. I don't know if it'll happen. I wouldn't rule that out just because you can never have too much depth, especially on pass rusher. And we'll have to wait and see. I think Logan Hall's snaps will increase as the year goes on. Sort of like Joe Tryon-Shoyinka's did last year. I think Logan Hall's could. And I think by the end of the season, if you're talking about somebody who could replace a starter by the end of the season, I think it could be Logan Hall replacing Will Golston's role. Logan Hall would give you a little bit more pass rush while also providing some run defense. So Will Golston only signed a 1-year deal, I believe. So he's over 30 and his time could be coming to an end, but he's still, for now, is still a solid player for this team. And I think this defensive line, while I don't think there's any like battles per se, like, and you're not even alluding to that. You're not trying to say it's Akeem Hicks versus Nacho. Like you're not saying that, but it's just interesting to look at. Like, I don't think there's battles, but I think there is roles that guys could carve out, but they just haven't yet because you haven't gotten to that point yet.
Well, I think what plays into this too, and the reason that I kind of look at this is measuring expectations for the regular season, because I wouldn't say this Bucs defensive line went out and got drastically better, but I think if Akeem Hicks is on his game this year, and like you said, he can kind of bring back that flavor from 2017, 2018, it's one of those things where, like, yeah, I do think they got marginally better when you've got two just absolute beasts in the middle of your defensive line. And then obviously the development of Joe Tryon-Shoyinka is going to be pretty crucial to that. But I've got high expectations for him this year. Truthfully, like, I'm excited to see what he can do. But
this is a critical year for him,
yeah, I think this is a critical year for the defensive line and the pass rush unit, because while 2020 they got the job done in the Super Bowl, they had an awesome performance. That was when it mattered the most. But I mean, let's be honest. I think one of the running storylines these past couple of years, since the Bucs defense has had the notoriety and the reputation that it has, is that for as good as they are, it almost feels like the pass rush can be underwhelming. And I feel like if this year we get to that point, depending on how healthy everyone is, it's a very slippery slope, because with a lot of the new faces in there and Ndamukong Suh more than likely not coming back at this point, I mean, let's just face it. It's one of those things where, like, I feel like if they get bad, they could get kind of like really bad. But I also feel like if they are marginally better than they were last year, that's going to put them in a much, much better position, because they have been a solid unit. You know what I mean? I think it's like, are they going to surprise us this year? Are we going to get more of the same? Or is that production going to kind of go away and maybe eventually be a problem?
So, yeah, you want to talk about some of the reasons that they can't beat the Rams or can't beat the Saints. It's because they can't rush the passer with 4 against those teams. Those two teams contain them, and that's what hurts. That playoff game, they couldn't get they couldn't get a pass rush with 4 guys.
Yeah, they barely sniffed Stafford.
They had the blitz, and Stafford against the blitz is one of the best in the NFL. So that was one of the reasons they lost that game, not just the injuries. People forget they were down 27-3 in that game. Like, they put themselves in that hole. And the pass rush was one of the issues in that game. So yeah, the pass rush is critical. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, when I say it's a critical year for him, not necessarily looking for breakout 12 to 15 sacks, but you want to see progress yet again, just like from Kyle Trask, their 2nd round pick, you want to see it from their 1st round pick even more. So especially since Joe Tryon-Shoyinka is going to be playing more, you want to see progress from him. And if you don't, it could be worrisome, but I'm betting on the upside of the player. I liked him coming out pre-draft, and I'm going to bet on his upside. I do think he'll show progress, while it may not be a huge jump, in year 2. I think it takes pass rushers a little bit of time. It takes them a little bit of time to really come into their own, unless they're like a Myles Garrett, Khalil Mack, like special talent.
Even look at a guy like Shaq Barrett. I mean, had he been given more of an opportunity in Denver, maybe it's a different story. But this is a guy who didn't go out and get 20 sacks a year until later on in his career.
Right.
He gets to deal with Tampa Bay.
27 years old.
Right. You know what I mean? He kind of had to bet on himself a little bit after not really getting the chance to push that product out on the field.
And the good thing is Joe Tryon-Shoyinka will get that chance.
Yeah, that's why those reps are that much more important this year.
Yeah, and I still am of the mindset that they should add a 3rd outside linebacker, just because I like Anthony Nelson, but he's more of a run defense type guy for me. He doesn't provide enough pass rush, so I would prefer a guy who can just come in on 3rd downs when you need him to and rush the passer. I personally would do that. I think there's a chance they will, but I think they want to get a look at, what guys look like in these roles in camp before they do anything like that. But yeah, like I said, the thing you want to see from JTS, though, is just progress. And I know we started this talking about the interior defensive line. That's kind of worked our way to the outside linebackers, but they all work together as one to me, especially when you're talking about a pass rushing unit. So it's important for those guys to step up this season. And if they do, that's great. I think the Bucs are going to be in good shape if they do. But if they don't, they could struggle again against some top tier quarterbacks that could just, your corners can't cover all day long, and if you give them all day, You either have to blitz, which leaves your corners on an island, or you're giving the quarterback 5-6 seconds and he's going to find the right guy. Aaron Rodgers is going to find the open guy. Patrick Mahomes is going to find the open guy. So, and they play a lot of good quarterbacks this year. So this year, even more than the last 2 years, I think a pass rush is critical.
Yeah. And this is probably going to sound like common sense to most people who understand it, but the Bucs are running a 3-4 hybrid quote-unquote defense. It's not like they're running a 4-3 under Mike Smith, who they were a couple of years ago. But at the end of the day, on this Bucs pass rush, the better your interior linemen do, the more opportunities they're going to open up for all of your outside guys. And at the end of the day, even though Todd Bowles likes to blitz as much as he does, the better your pass rushers do on the line, you don't have to rely on it that much. And yeah, we're probably still going to see it a shit ton this year, don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, if everybody is on their P's and Q's and everyone is complimenting everyone else, that's where it gets that much more effective, right? You're not going to see them swing and miss on a blitz as much as maybe they usually do, but this is all stuff we're going to figure out in time. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that's just about going to do it for this week's episode of the Cannon Fire Podcast. NFL training camp is here. Rookies report this week. The vets are back next week, which means CFP is officially back. Be on the lookout as well. One of the things that I like to do during training camp these past couple of years, whenever we're able to get inside and get some access, whether it's going with a season ticket holder friend, James, I'll usually bring my camera. I'll get some cool footage for you guys, make a nice video out of it. So be on the lookout for more training camp vlogs this year. They did really well last year, and that makes it even more exciting to put them together. So those should be coming up here pretty soon as things get rolling. Evan, any last words?
No, well, one thing I wanted to throw out there, the receivers, who's going to be the odd man out. You kind of got Scotty Miller, Tyler Johnson, Surreal Grayson. There's a lot of names there, so just keep an eye on that. We'll elaborate more on that when the games actually start, preseason and stuff.
Yeah, and we touched on it a little bit on the last episode as well. If you'd like to hear some sort of preview for the wide receiver position, go check that out. But I would say as of right now, the discussion remains the same. It's all about who's going to be the odd man out. But as of right now, it's pretty tough to project. We're kind of just have to wait and watch this one play out in real time, which will also be really exciting.
Yeah, it will. And like you said, CFP is back, and the season prediction show is coming sooner rather than later. We don't have an exact date yet, but the season prediction show, one of our biggest shows of the year, will be coming within the next 2-3 weeks or so. Probably we like to do it before the season, and really probably before the preseason ends as well. So we'd like to get that out right around early to mid-August. So be on the lookout for that, and a lot of the other great stuff that we have coming up.
Absolutely. Anything you got in the oven over at bucksnation.com?
No, not right now. Covered the Kyle Rudolph signing and everything. I might have something out about how maybe Tom Brady could be even better than he was in the past 2 years. How he could be better in 2022 than he was in 2020 and 2021. So be on the lookout for that. Like I said, I don't know when, but it could be soon.
Exciting times, folks. Football is back. Oh, there's nothing like it. I'm really starting to get that feeling now. I mean, even more so than when we started this podcast. The time is coming, and of course, we're going to keep you updated every step of the way. But thanks so much for checking out this week's edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast. Check out the show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show, and of course, Buccaneer news as it happens. Speaking of Bucs news as it happens, you can check out my co-host Evan on Instagram at Bucs_daily, the #1 Buccaneers fan page on Instagram. You can also find him on Twitter at EvanNFL. And like we mentioned, check out his written work at BucsNation.com. Last but not least, you can find myself, Instagram and Twitter at Rhettakus, RHETTAKUS. If you follow me, I will follow you back. One last shout out, one time for the one time, everybody hanging out in the live chat with us today. Mr. Smith, Neil out. Mr. Smith says, "What's up, boys?" And we're literally wrapping up the show. Sorry, dude. I really apologize. Matt Diaz, Travis L, Dante Holmes, Richard T from LA out there on the West Coast woke up bright and early with us this morning. We truly do appreciate you guys. Excited to get you more training camp coverage coming soon. Stay tuned for more. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, signing off for my co-host, Evan Wanish. We'll talk to you in the next one. Until then, and as always, go Bucs.